I joined the Navy, I think, because my grandfather was in the Navy during the war, and we used to sit and listen to some great stories of his travels. Also, my father was a big influence on my early life because he himself traveled throughout the world as an oilman, and I used to listen to his stories. So the reason for me wanting to join the Navy was all about travel, all about escape, all about going to places which as a 16-year-old I could only dream of. My best memory of the Navy? The travel is one great memory that comes to mind. The fact that I went to places such as the Dutch Antilles, South Atlantic, Sardinia, to name but a few. But also, one of my overriding memories is the amount of reading that I'd done at sea. Usually spent on 29 bulkhead, which is the last bulkhead before the bunk space. I would sit and read books that I've never really tackled again. Read Dickens at sea, a huge undertaking. Probably couldn't read it now, but you had a lot of time at sea to do things that you wanted, and I found that reading was something that I learned to love at 300 feet below the ocean. Shoes have always been an important part of my dress. It started with my mother, I think, because she would give both myself and my brother the money to go and buy our own shoes. So you can imagine, as a 15-year-old, wearing a fairly strict uniform at the local grammar school, the only thing that I could pop, probably not a word used at the time, but pop my uniform was a pair of shoes. So it became a little bit of an obsession, buying shoes, asking my mum for more money so I could buy ever more bizarre looking 1980s designs. But secondly, I think I was also influenced by a lot of the music at the time. MTV hadn't quite came about, but Top of the Pops was something we watched every Thursday, and this made it more and more a desire to be able to buy new shoes. The sandal is named after the second deck of a submarine. I was fortunate to be on one submarine for most of my naval career. I sat and cleaned 2 deck every day. I sat on 29 bulkhead and read, and twice a day I would scrub 2 deck's floor, which was quite long. It would go from bulkhead 29 all the way down to 2 deck ladder. Something that I took great pleasure in because we had to keep the submarine clean. 2 deck then became part of my own folklore, if you like. I told stories. I still tell stories about being at sea, and 2 deck is where it all started. So when I created my company, I wanted a name which encapsulated everything about my early life, everything about what I held dear. And still now, 2 deck is, with my kids, is part of the story that I tell of being on a submarine and what it's like to be on a vessel. Sometimes in places you shouldn't be, sometimes in places that the sun shines. It's part of my life. When 2 deck was conceived as a company, I wanted to be able to craft something within it that made it noble, something that made it valid to me. Reading was always a big part of my life. It's a big part of my life now with my children. So when I came across John Wood's incredible story of his trip to Nepal as a Microsoft engineer, and how he found people who didn't get books. In fact, in one of the pieces he says in his book that there was one novel and it was a trashy novel. That's all they had to reference the English language. And I found it inspiring, and I wanted, at some point during the course of the setup of the company, to be able to give back. And the easiest way to do it is through everything we sell, we give a portion of the funds back to Room to Read to be able to stock books on shelves and in libraries. And I think this was a really, it was a cause that both I could get behind, the staff can get behind, but my family can get behind, because reading is a huge part of my kids' life. It's what we do every night. We discuss the stories we read, we discuss the papers, we discuss articles on the internet. So it's a very big part of what we want to try and do as a company. And I hope to honour what John Wood started in some small way, to be able to be part of that movement of making sure that literacy standards can rise across the world. I'm often asked about the vision of what I want to try and create. Firstly, it's a shoe company. I've always been in and around shoes as a product for most of my adult career. Firstly as a buyer, then through various different brands. And one thing really sticks in my mind, and it's a conversation with a gentleman called Robert Richards, good friend, who I worked with alongside at Glastonbury over 10 years ago. And I remember when we did a particular promotion where we were giving boots to get signed, and then we would auction these boots off. He looked at me and said, don't get too, don't look through rose-coloured spectacles at the charity side of this. And he said to me, what I want you to do is sell more boots. If you sell more boots, then I can give more money to the good causes that Glastonbury supported. And it really, really sort of hit home. My job as a founder and as a shoe guy is to sell more sandals. If I sell more sandals, I can give more books away, and I can craft a company that is both genuine in the products that it sells and noble in the fact that it wants to do something good in order to keep the whole circle virtuous. And that's what I hope to do over the coming years. The sandal came to me in 1984 as part of my first kit that I was given in the Navy. It was, and still is, my favourite piece of kit. It was a piece of kit you wore all the time when you were on board. It was your footwear to wear in the mess. And when you went ashore, it was the footwear you wore when you went into the sea. So it was always with you. It was very classic, it was very traditionally made, and it lasted an enormous long time. I've still got my pair today. They're 30 years old. I still wear them, or at least I still wear one piece, because one of them was torn to pieces and used for the production of our own sandal, the TD001. We hope we have honoured the original design, and we hope we've crafted a product that not only can be still used by people like me who've been in the Navy, but also open up a secondary customer who will use this product, hopefully, we think, for 30 years to come. Customers we would like to craft at 2Deck are those customers who value a product which is handmade. In a lot of senses, what we're doing is handmade. We also want to find customers who take a pride in buying a product that they know is going to last a long time. A little like a story in a way. You know, stories last an eternity. My sandals will last a long time. They're very beautifully made. And I want to be able to say to the customer, the sandal you buy now, you look back on the travels that this sandal has done in 30 years' time, and these sandals will tell their own stories. My own pair that I got when I was 16, they're still here today, they still look good, they still can be worn, and it's amazing that these sandals have been all around the world. They've followed me around since I was 16 years old. I'm now a touch under 50. And I can tell you that these sandals have been in multiple oceans, multiple cities, multiple bars where we would be ashore. And I really want my customers to get the same out of that product that I did when I got gifted my pair as a young boy. Where would I like my company to be? I'd love to think that I can craft the company, manage it, and build it in such a way that it can employ a good number of staff who enjoy the same as I do. I'd like to think that the company can grow its customers, grow its product line, and be in a position to genuinely look back in 3 to 5 years' time to say that it made a difference. I want to be able to be real, and I know it sounds a bit strange sometimes, but I want the company to truly represent wholeheartedly what it's trying to do. And I want a company where people can come into work and tell their own stories about what they've done and their own vision of the future. And I think if we can craft that and we can be good custodians of a business, then we have every chance of being here in 5 years' time and looking forward to the next 5 years to take the company to the next level.